Live from the Ken and Valerie Baker studio at WHYY, this is Studio 2.
On Monday, November 3rd, welcome to the show, friends. I'm Cherry Gregg.
And I'm Avi Wolfman-Arent. Thanks for being with us on this election week.
I know. Big politics week.
We're going to talk a lot of politics this week, Tuesday, when the elections happen, Wednesday, when the results come in. And so we know there's going to be a little politics overload perhaps this week, Cherry. So today on the show, we wanted to look at politics just through a different lens, more through a societal lens. And we decided to look at politics and dating, politics and relationships. Do politics matter more today when it comes to who we decide to date and who we decide to marry? There's some interesting data. We'll parse it later this hour. We'll also talk about whether it's possible to have a politically mixed relationship, a successful one, a long-lasting one.
Yeah.
We're going to have a couple in who indeed are in the middle of that endeavor. They've been doing it for a long, long time. So excited to have that conversation.
We're going to get the tea.
Gonna get the tea, as they say. We would love to hear from you this hour, as always. This is going to be a good, I think, listener comment and call hour. We want to know how have politics affected your romantic choices and relationships. Give us a call, 888-477-9499. Email studio2@whyy.org. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, hello. Drop a comment in the chat.
I just want to say I'm so glad I'm not on the apps right now because
for many reasons.
But you know, this is an actual, your political affiliation is a category now that people consider. And so I look forward to having this conversation, but I hope folks call in and I hope they email in again, 888-477-9499. Email studio2@whyy.org. So we have our trio of news stories today.
Let's get it started.
Yeah, Pennsylvania's emergency food plans, they are in full effect after SNAP benefits were suspended because of that government shutdown. 2 million residents of the Commonwealth are impacted. They are SNAP recipients. And so Governor Josh Shapiro, he signed a disaster declaration to quickly unlock $5 million to support food banks across the state. He also launched the SNAP Emergency Relief Fund, which is taking private donations to support those food banks. So far, they raised about $1 million. New Jersey has also declared a state of emergency to support their 800,000 residents. Delaware took a similar step. And all of this comes as the Trump administration is under a noon deadline. This hour, they have been told to explain to a federal judge, the judge who ordered the feds to pay SNAP benefits, how that administration plans to comply with that order. As we reported last week, Pennsylvania joined about 24 other states and D.C. in a lawsuit against that administration, arguing that withholding SNAP benefits is illegal since Congress has contingency funds allocated for this very purpose. By the way, food banks have been bracing for the surge. In Philadelphia, we have 500 residents who use SNAP.
500,000.
500,000 residents on SNAP. And Mayor Sherrell Parker signed an executive order over the weekend, immediately allocating $4 million to food service partners. So a lot of folks are sort of stepping up. They want to fill the void. They want to make sure people don't get into a desperate place and hopefully, you know, hold them over until this shutdown ends.
Yeah. And even outside the government, there's a lot of community efforts to share
people
food.
Are donating, churches bringing food in.
I'll just draw attention. WHYY's Corey Sharber has a story up on our website right now about a nonprofit called Sharing Access that created a map of free food locations across the city, community fridges and the like. So worth checking out if you need that resource or you know someone who needs that resource.
Yeah.
Story number 2 now, Cherry. We've mentioned this. Election day is tomorrow in New Jersey. But 1.1 million residents of the Garden State have already voted in that big governor's race between Republican Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Mikey Sherrill. And the early voter data is giving Democrats some cautious optimism, according to the New York Times. Of those who've already voted, 51% are registered Democrats compared to 29% registered Republicans. The rest are independent. And in raw vote total, there have been about 267,000 more Democrat voters so far than Republican voters. And that's actually a little bit bigger than the margin 4 years ago. And in that race, the Democrat Phil Murphy did narrowly beat Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican nominee 4 years ago. Of course, we don't know how any of these folks actually voted. We just know their party affiliations, but it's starting to look like the 2025 electorate in New Jersey is pretty similar to the 2021 electorate.
Interesting.
And that might mean that Jack Ciattarelli has to win over an even greater percentage of the Democrats and independents who are casting ballots, if indeed the composition of the electorate is pretty similar to 4 years ago.
So interesting. By the way, Inside New Jersey did an analysis of the early voter data, and they reported that more infrequent Democratic voters, people who didn't vote in the last 4 elections, that they showed up in those early voting numbers.
Not what you want to see if you're a Republican.
2-1 margin, by the way, to Republicans. They also noted that nearly 60% of the early vote were from women, even though New Jersey's electorate is only 55% women. So women are represented in this. And by the way, there is an election also happening in Pennsylvania, because we mentioned that tomorrow's election day. The big statewide race is the judicial retention race. We have 3 Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices, all Democrats, up for a retention vote. Also, Philadelphia District Attorney race, that's happening. Incumbent Larry Krasner against challenger Patrick Dugan. We had them on the show last week. So lots of things we'll be paying attention to.
Yeah, of course, the New Jersey one that's the
big one. That's the national race.
That's the big prize coming up tomorrow. And look, the folks who turn out early, it might just be that they're super enthusiastic, and the rest of the people are coming on election day.
And there's a lot of votes. I mean, a lot of people wait till election day.
Of people wait till election day.
Majority of the folks.
Ciattarelli, even more than 4 years ago, has more embraced the MAGA base. And so that could be a group that turns out big on election day for him. It could be that the folks that wait to the last second who are more persuadable are more Ciattarelli favorable than 4 years ago. So there's a lot to be determined. But I think the Democratic operatives in New Jersey are looking at these numbers and saying, yeah, this is about what we need to do to bring this thing home.
Yeah, and you're going to see those last minute push, getting people to the polls tomorrow. So we'll be watching.
We will be watching. Story number 3, Chair.
Yes, the air you breathe could have a major impact on your brain. An article in the New York Times highlights recent studies that show a link between higher concentrations of some pollutants and dementia. One of the main studies comes from University of Pennsylvania, which looks at about 600 brains, and they determined that the odds of severe Alzheimer's were 20 times higher for individuals who lived closer to certain types of pollution. And one stark example comes from 2 patients at Penn Memory Center. They donated their brains after they died for research. One patient, who was 83, lived in Center City near I-676. His brain had many of the plaques and proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease, and he lived with severe dementia. The other patient, who was 84, died of brain cancer but lived in Gladwin, surrounded by woods and a country club, barely had any Alzheimer's pathology. The Gladwin patient was exposed to half of the pollution of the Center City patient. And the conclusion is that the quality of the air you breathe could very well impact your cognitive health.
Yeah, your brain health. Specifically, they're looking at this particulate matter called PM 2.5. And look, this study really stood out to me, someone who lives in a city, right? And
I know, we're city dwellers.
You're exposed to a lot of car exhaust and other forms of pollution. It's just, it does make you think, and it makes you think of sort of the old wisdom, the received wisdom of sort of fresh air being good for you. Like there might be real hard science to that. That's not just an old wives' tale, right? And the other thing that makes me think is that there's a lot of advantages to living in a city. I mean, you walk more. Obviously, there's a lot of environmental arguments for more density, less sprawl. And so I'm trying to think of how we as a society try to make cities cleaner from an air perspective so that people can feel, safe living there and feeling like they're breathing clean air, because there's a lot of like societal and individual benefits to living in a city. But this is a little scary to read, honestly.
And mind you, there are many factors that contribute to whether or not you have Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. This is just one thing.
But they're starting to zero in on this as a real link, a real causal link, not just an associative link.
And it can make it worse. That's the other thing. So definitely something to think about. And I'm sure there will be more studies that we can rely on.
Let me sneak in a secret secret fourth story real quick.
Oh, yeah. Go
Can
ahead.
I sneak this in?
Sneak it
We
in.
have time? Okay. You remember the Philly Special Christmas album? This was this Christmas album that was produced.
I remember it. We talked about it.
By the Eagles offensive linemen.
They sounded good, by the way.
Yeah, they sound really good. So the two have come out already, and I think they said that was going to be it.
That's
but
what we heard.
They
That's
put an
what we heard.
Instagram post up this morning from the official account saying, "Did somebody say Christmas?" with the like little cheeky emoji with like the shh emoji, like secret. And then they sort of implied in the comments that maybe there's another project coming.
Interesting.
So put that on your Christmas list.
Well, by the way, I mean, Mariah Carey came out with her video saying it's time. So everybody's stepping up. Everybody's stepping up.
Mariah's the lead and everybody follows. Coming up on the show today, we're talking about politics and relationships, how much politics matter and who we choose to love. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Studio 2 at WHYY.org. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back, everybody, to Studio 2 on WHYY. I'm Avi Wolfman-Eric.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. It's almost trite at this point to say Americans are more divided than ever. But Americans really are pretty darn politically divided. And it's worth wondering how that sense of partisanship filters into other aspects of society.
In fact, there was just a story today in the New York Times about how politically coded so many of our choices and preferences are. Boat owners are more conservative. Wine drinkers are more liberal. Politics is everywhere and in everything. So, of course, it makes sense that politics would factor into who we love.
But how much of a factor is it? Do political affiliations matter more to modern couples? We will dig into that data and we'll ask how these trends might exacerbate or counteract the tribal nature of our politics.
So later in the hour, we're going to chat with a politically mixed couple to ask how they manage those differences. But first, let's introduce a couple of folks who've thought a lot about the topics of politics and love. Dr. George James is a therapist and author of I Give Myself Permission. George, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is a really great topic and something I know that we're going to have fun talking about.
Absolutely. And Jessica Grose is an opinion writer at the New York Times. Jessica, great to have you on Studio 2.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes. And for you, our listeners at home, on the road, and elsewhere, we want to hear from you. Our question of the day is, how have politics affected your romantic choices and relationships? Our phone number is 888-477-9499. The email is studio2@WHYY.org. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, leave your comments in the chat.
Citizen on Facebook says, yes, political ideology is very important because it highlights a person's character. Omar from Philadelphia says, it's not about politics per se, but a non-voter would be a turnoff. So keep those comments coming. Studio2@WHYY.org, 888-477-9499. Jessica, I wanted to start with you because you were intrigued by this topic of how much politics influences our coupling decisions. And you did a little digging and you talked to readers. You got some survey feedback. I'm curious what inspired your curiosity in this and then what you found as you started to dig.
So I had been reading a lot about the gender polarization of young men and young women, and there was a lot of hand-wringing. Young women are so much more liberal than young men. No one's going to get married and have babies anymore because of this gender polarization. And when you dug into the details, it was a lot more complicated than that, overarching panic. And I wanted to actually talk to young people themselves. So mostly people from 18 to 30 I talked to for this piece. About what their political views were and what would potentially be deal breakers in the dating world. And so the first thing to know is that around 80% political scientists, categorize this as people are just not that political. Like 20% of Americans are extremely political. They are involved. They follow the news like junkies. They are just it is part of who they are and their innate value system.
And with that, we say hello to our listeners this hour.
These are our folks.
Right. That's me. That's my,
Yes.
I'm obviously work in the news. I see it all. I think about it all. But I realize that I'm in my own bubble, as many of us are. 80% of people, they might vote in elections, but actually a lot of them don't. But the politics are just not animating their day-to-day lives in the same way. So that's the first thing to know. The second thing to know is that online dating really changes things. Yeah. So people who met in person tended to be much more open to people with different beliefs because that wasn't what the other person was leading with, right? They were leading with some other personality aspect. They just had chemical attraction. Like there's so many other things that go into your sense of a person that aren't like, what was your view on the marginal tax rate? Well, that's something for later. So it was much more complicated when I dug into it, but I will say two things, which is that number one, Trump is uniquely divisive. So I heard from so many people, often women and immigrants or children of immigrants who said, I would date a Republican, but I would not date a Trump voter because the things he has said about groups that I am either part of or that I really care about are just so repellent to me that I can't go there. So that was one thing. And then the other topic that was very a deal breaker or not a deal breaker was on abortion, just because, especially for young people, that really governs how they will make choices in their lives and make choices if they're sexually active, how things will go if something happens, right? That's not just like I have this belief, we have to maybe make this decision together at some point. And I want the person to be aligned with me either way, either if they were, anti-abortion or pro-choice. So that was sort of the broad overview. But people were much more open to people who did not hold their exact beliefs than I think the headlines might suggest.
And I wanted to follow up with you, Jessica, because one of the things that drew me to this was the online dating. A lot of people do meet their love interests online, and this has become a category, like a something you can actually comment on and that people look for, and that is a filter now on the apps. Can you talk about how many people actually care about this and how it is affecting your matches if you're on some of these apps?
Yeah, so again, I've found it really varied city by city. So, here I live in Brooklyn. Democrats outnumber Republicans 8-1. If you're a Democrat, you can make that a deal breaker. You can say, I'm not dating anyone who is not a Democrat, because you still have a whole pool of people to choose from, right?
Yeah.
If you live in a purple state or if you are in a political minority, you understand what the numbers look like, right? And so I think people are very rational when they're making those choices. So I think it does sort of play into it. And the other thing was, people, at least in very liberal areas, told me that they don't trust when men put moderate on their profile. They think that they are actually conservative, but they don't want to be filtered out of all liberal women's choices. So I thought that was very funny that everyone is aware of what these sort of coded responses mean, and they know that some people are using this as a filtering mechanism, but a lot of it is just people are rationally responding to the areas that they live in and what the choices are. And I talked to one, now I'm struggling to remember because this is already a year ago, but I think she was a lesbian and she lived in a rural part of the Mountain West. And she was like, I keep having to widen my geographic circle because there are simply just not even enough people who share my gender preference in this, area. So it's really very dependent on where you live in the country.
I want to get some more comments in because we've got a ton. Sean says, I don't care if she's Sydney Sweeney. I would never get emotionally entangled with a Republican or a Zionist. Those would be Sean's
very
two no's.
Strong. Yeah.
Adrian says, I've always been a registered Democrat, but went to college, then lived and worked in D.C. for 10 years. Back then, I was open to dating Republicans. I was even engaged to one. However, now I can't do it. Today, if someone is voting down ballot Republican, they are supporting those who are actively trying to strip the hard-fought rights of women and other formerly protected categories. That's Adrian's point of view. And so, Jessica, just to finish up a little bit in some of the research that you've done and the digging you've done, people feel like this is a trend, like this is moving in the direction of what Adrian kind of laid out there, which is that people were more open to these politically mixed coupling situations and have become less so. What I found interesting in some of the stuff that you wrote was that I don't think you were saying that's not a trend at all, but that there's other types of preferences and selection trends that are much more pronounced in modern dating. I'm just curious if you could just go into whether there's a trend here, but also like how the intensity of the trend compares to other types of selection criteria like education and earnings.
So education is the big one, right?
Yeah.
And now that we have sorted ourselves politically by education, so if you're college educated or you've gone to graduate school, you're much more likely to be a Democrat. There's very complicated reasons why that's true, but I think that sort of all goes hand in hand together. But people want to date people with the same education level that they do. And that is actually one of the biggest social changes of the past 50 years. So the cliche was, in the Mad Men era, a man might marry his secretary and she had less educational attainment than he did and was less ambitious. And that was a very typical thing that happened. But now you see that college educated people want to, marry and date other college educated people and the same, on down the education level.
And so that's something that's really emerged as like a very strong trend, like more so than being like, I only want to date people in my political tribe.
Absolutely, but they sort of go together somewhat since we've seen sorting of college educated voters into the Democratic Party more. So it's all a mishmash. But
it's one of many factors. It's one of many
but
factors.
It's not. You're correct in that it's not untrue that people are less likely to date someone from the other political party than 20, 30 years ago. Because for lots and lots of reasons. But I also think that and I really actually am curious to see what happens when Trump moves off the national stage, because what I have seen in younger Gen Z is a lot of them are more moderate. They may have very strongly held beliefs, but they've seen all the adults in the room just act like children and not inspire them in any way, and they are sick of the fighting. Like the rancor is really a turnoff. And and aside from specifically the dating topic, I've been interviewing members of Gen Z for the past year on a variety of different topics, and that just comes up sort of over and over again. They're sick of the fighting, they're sick of the chaos, they want stability, and they are turned off by both parties doing it.
And George, I wanted to bring you into the conversation because, you were hearing our conversation with Jessica about how trends and dating are sort of shifting, and the younger folks are sort of shifting back to wanting to bring everybody together. What have you been seeing from the patients and the folks you've been talking to?
Yeah, Jessica brings up a lot of really great points. And one of the things I was thinking about is this term around proximity. A lot of times we connected with a partner based off of closeness, whether it's neighborhood, whether it's school, whether it's work. Those were the reasons why we connected with someone. They were close by. With online dating over the past few years, proximity has changed. You can date someone in Italy or somewhere else, right? And so now that's also made us more informed with how we want to choose. It's not just because we went to the same school and had some classes. Now I want to know more about you, and do our values align, which is a big thing. Education is a value. It could be how you care about other people. That's a value. Your politics, that's part of your value system. And so we make choices and decisions with who we want to partner with based off of a different form of proximity, but also around values. And I think that becomes so important when you say, well, what happens with our future? what will our family look like? What will our children, if we decide to have children, look like? Or what values will we instill with them? These are all things that people are thinking about sometimes, unfortunately, from date number one.
By the way, Edie says, absolutely, it makes a difference. Shared values are crucial for me in relationships. What people stand for and who they stand up for tells me a great deal about their character, the kind of world they want for the next generations, equal rights, environmental responsibility, being a peacemaker. All of these are important values for me. So are you seeing that? And are people sort of willing to work through the differences, or are they just sort of like, you know what? You are MAGA. I'm not even going to go out with you. What are you seeing?
I think that people have always been willing to work through some of those differences, and sometimes it would just come up along the way. What this is doing, or what this conversation is really about, is that we're learning about these differences early on in the process. So now we get to really either decide, do I want to work through that with you, or do I want to try that with someone else? But the extremes always cause a conflict.
So you're saying people used to just meet somebody, thought they were cute, maybe they were funny, and then over time they reveal their political affiliation, but you probably liked them by then.
Right. You're already in enough to say the sunk cost. You already spent that time, right? Like, all right, I'll keep going. Right. Or you recognize, like, oh, you have how much debt? And right, like that, and now we have to figure that out along the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so, but part of this too is the fact that we know that people's, where they live and like what school they go to and what their job is, a lot of that is politically coded too. So if you were just dating the person down the street, let's say in a small town in the middle of America, it's I don't want to say likely, but it's a pretty good chance that you shared some political values anyway. So you might have been dating within your political tribe, just not explicitly with the intent to do so. It's just because the people near you might have similar beliefs to you. So I guess the question is, what's really different? Even if you're not using it as a screening process, George, you might end up in the same place. So what do you think about that?
So I think what has happened, really with the Trump era, is that when you now say I'm dating someone from another political party, we're now making there's something wrong with you. Wow. Versus before, it was like, okay, I don't really like that, or I don't agree with you, but okay, maybe we can figure it out. You think differently about taxes, I think differently about people,
but he's
and
still
maybe
cute.
we can work.
They're still cute,
right? Or we can figure out a way to be together. But now, if you are like a Trump supporter for someone who's a Democrat, you're like, no, you're an evil person. Like that's what the person thinks. And what does it mean for me to partner with someone that I think is not a good person?
Yeah. And let's bring in a caller. We have Allison from Newcastle, Delaware on the line. Allison, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
Well, I guess first off, a little bit about me. I'm a widow. I was married for 25 years. My husband and I were from vastly different backgrounds. He didn't have an education. He was younger than me, but we were married for 25 years. And the biggest thing that I'd say is that we really listened to each other, and we really did talk, and we didn't always have the same beliefs, but we were able to work through it because we both understood each other. And I think that's just what's going on in this country now, is that we're just so polarized to the fact that we're not going to listen to the other side or do anything about what's happening across the aisle, that we're not willing to come together and say, hey, I really, really strongly feel this, and I really, really strongly feel that. And at least, even if they walk away not agreeing on the particular concept, at least you guys have listened to each other, understand where the other person is coming from, and maybe you can come together and figure out a way to make things work.
Yeah.
Great call.
Well, thank you so much.
Allison.
That's Allison from Newcastle, Delaware.
I want to read another comment. This is fascinating, from Rick. Rick says, I'm 36, male, biracial, and gay. My former partner was political beyond measure, to the point where it became exhausting and depressing being around him. Even though we agreed on many issues, we couldn't reconcile his overt political pessimism with my neutral to optimistic view of life. My current partner is more moderate/conservative than I am, but he has been a breath of fresh air to date because of his approach to politics and willingness to converse. That's so fascinating, Jessica, the idea that maybe the compatibility measure that matters more to some people is just how into politics you are and how that informs your worldview versus what your politics are. I'm curious if that came up in any of your conversations, or if you've ever heard that sentiment expressed before.
Absolutely. So I interviewed one woman who said that her current girlfriend talked deeply about into the weeds about health policy on the first date, and that was like a hugely wonderful for her because that like she and I'm like I would have gone screaming in the other direction, but it like takes all kinds, right? Because they both were so animated by this. And from the first caller, I so identified with that, and I heard from so many people who were dating people who had different beliefs from them, and they said that what made it acceptable and what allowed them to move forward was knowing what animated the belief.
Yeah.
So if they had an explanation behind it that they could understand, they and that they didn't think was a negative explanation for it, they could keep it moving, right?
Yeah.
And so it was about being able to really deeply have these conversations even when they didn't agree, which I thought was inspiring.
Yeah. And by the way, you, our listeners at home, on the road, and elsewhere, our question of the day is, how have politics affected your romantic choices and relationships? Participate in the conversation by calling 888-477-9499 or email studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, keep those comments coming in the chat. And so, George, I understand that some of your patients, potential clients, ask you about your political affiliation. Tell me, when did this start coming up, and how does it affect your client, I guess, doctor-client relationships?
Yeah, this is definitely something that has come up, I think, really since 2016, right? Because it became very clear that people wanted to know what side you're on. And even as a therapist, I've had clients where we're like, hey, who are you voting for? Where are you? And as a therapist, you're supposed to be like this person that doesn't have any thoughts and any beliefs. I don't really agree with that, and I don't really practice that way. But that's what we're trained. And it's hard to really be ambiguous when people need to know, like, hey, where are you? There's all these ways that we disclose who we are and what we believe in one way or another. But some people, it mattered to them because that provided, for some folks, safety. Can I truly be open and vulnerable with you, especially from understanding where you are politically?
Interesting. And very interesting.
Gary from Germantown quotes Tolstoy to us, and I haven't validated this quote. I don't know if this is actual Tolstoy quote or an internet Tolstoy quote. It says, what counts in making a happy marriage is not so much how compatible you are, but how you deal with incompatibility. Do you find that to be true, George, that ultimately it's about negotiating conflict? That's kind of what it comes down to in terms of trying to make it last.
I think what the caller Allison brought up is connected to that, right?
Yeah.
Over time, what you're really trying to do is how you negotiate with your partner.
Yeah.
How do I communicate? How do I problem solve? What are our common ground that we're really trying to work through? And that could be about anything. That could be about where you send your kids to school. That could be about politics, how you spend money. It's around, do we understand and support each other? And can we give each other some space to figure that out?
So interesting. By the way, Julie says, thank you so much for today. One thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is the fact that our politics are changing our culture, our sense of humor, our likes and our dislikes. I don't know if it's social media, but when I have been around MAGA supporters, I cannot relate to their humor. I find it mean or cruel or simply not that funny. And Jessica, I do wonder if you've heard about that. Like, people just, it's not that the politics, but it's just almost like y'all just don't get along in other areas because, and it seems to relate to political affiliations. Did any of that come up?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of that is just we are all in our own information silos, and there is so much less shared culture in general, not just about, dating or friendship, because so many of us spend so much time on social media, and we're watching different TV shows and we're getting different influencers. I think that there's less of that connective tissue, and everyone making, a Simpsons reference on Monday that everybody could understand because 30 million people watched that last night. We don't have that anymore. And so I feel like it isn't just in politics, it's in, finer and finer slices of humanity. And I see it even, I just wrote a column about how I'm in my 40s and all I get is ads for supplements for menopause. Like the algorithm knows exactly who I am and it feeds me accordingly. It drives me bananas. But it's just like we're all in our little silos like that, getting fed the information that we get fed. So I think people are finding it across different kinds of identities, not just political.
Yeah, I know that when you looked into this, Jessica, I think you found that you weren't as alarmed by the sort of the trends in dating and politics as maybe some of the other headlines made it seem. But were there trends that you discovered that were genuinely alarming to you, that you were like, this feels like it's going to have a sort of metastatic effect on society, just the way that we're sorting, or something about who we're choosing to couple with, that you're like, this worries me a little bit? We have about a minute.
Yeah, people just not coupling, people being isolated. There seems to be 10 to 20% of young people, especially, who are very isolated. They don't have friendships. They are not in work or school, and they are not dating either. And so this group of people who just are not doing well overall in mental health, like, I worry about that more than I specifically worry about political polarization. I want young people to go out and make romantic mistakes and try things on and, have fun. And so I lots of people are still doing that, but I do think that this loneliness, this isolation is worse than it used to be.
Well, that's Jessica Grose, opinion writer at the New York Times. We have to say goodbye to her this hour, but thank you so much for your time. Fascinating
Thanks for
stuff.
having me.
Yes, and coming up, we have a couple who are living this reality every day. He's a Democrat, she's a Republican. We'll ask, what's harder, election night or date night? We'll talk about that coming up after the break. This is Studio 2. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Studio 2 here on WHYY. I'm Cherry Gregg.
And I'm Avi Wolfman-Arendt. This hour, we've been talking about dating and finding love across party lines. And our question for you, our listeners, is this: how have politics affected your romantic choices and relationships? Call 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, drop a comment in the chat.
And with us here in our Philadelphia studios is therapist Dr. George James. And we now want to bring in a couple that shows marriage is possible across party lines. Joining us are Farah Jimenez. She is a registered Republican. We also have David Hyman, a registered Democrat, and they are married. And Farah and David, welcome to Studio 2.
Thanks for having us.
You. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys doing this. Before we get started, I actually want to bring in Steve from Chestnut Hill, one of our callers, who I think has a call that's going to get us right onto theme here. So Steve from Chestnut Hill, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
Hi, thank you. My comment is that there's a lot of turmoil in society right now, and this may be like one aspect of it. I think it's very healthy because I'm old enough to remember when if you weren't a white male, you weren't heard. Your opinion didn't count. I remember moms of friends, this is back like in the 60s, who would subsume their political opinions to their husbands. So I see a plus side to all these discussions and all these issues, because it's, I think, a natural part of people having equality.
Well, thank you for that perspective, Steve from Chestnut Hill. So David and Farah, first of all, we have to get some biographical background here. How long have you guys been together? How did you meet?
We met in 1995, so we've been together a long time. And actually how we met is apropos of this discussion.
Yeah.
I was a student at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and David was a partner at a no longer existing law firm. And it was a job fair for minority students. And I appeared at his table at for an interview. And David, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. I noted on her resume that it said she was a committee person in the 27th Ward. And being active in Democratic politics, I knew the ward leader there and made the assumption that she knew the Democratic ward leader there as well. But she didn't.
Oh, wow. So I was going to ask, when did politics come into your relationship?
So from the beginning.
Right there.
Wow.
And it wasn't like you ran the other direction, like, oh, well, she does. How did you process the information? You assumed she was a Democrat, David. It was the opposite based on this, little bit of biographical information about her. So when you found that out, what was your reaction?
Were you surprised?
She's interesting.
Yeah.
And I have a low tolerance for boredom. So.
Wow. And what did you think, Farah?
So I was interviewing, so I was only focused on getting a job. I wasn't particularly thinking that I was going to find a life partner through that interview. But what ended up happening is that David invited me to a fundraiser for Senate candidate Carol Moseley Braun. If you remember, she was from Chicago, Democrat. Yep. And I was all too keen to go because I'm always interested in politics, whatever form it takes. And so I attended. And then I returned the favor by inviting him to come hear Alan Keyes, because he was the Republican candidate who ultimately lost to Barack Obama when he first ran for Senate in Chicago. And he was speaking at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. I invited David to come and hear him speak. And it went that way, back and forth to different political events early in our getting to know each other.
It sounds like the differences in your politics actually became a glue that sort of brought you back together. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that it was something we both shared an interest in, and we're both intellectually curious and are comfortable going outside our spheres to see different perspectives, and it makes it interesting.
And for your viewers who are watching, you'll notice a bit of differences between us. And so obviously we're different races, ethnicities, even generation. We have a generational difference, different politics, and different religions.
Wow.
And so all of those levels were just provided real interesting fodder for conversations and really getting to know each other, as opposed to viewing them as things to decide we're not going to have conversations about, we're not going to date. We view them compelling and interesting, and that's what brought us together.
And I got to ask you, election night at your house, do you have situations where you each voted for someone different? And is this like, what is it like? Like, are there snacks involved? Like, what's happening on election night when you each had different candidates you're supporting?
There have been some evenings where it's been a little tense, but I'd say for the most part, and this is a sad state of affairs, frequently neither of us is too enthusiastic about the choices. Where maybe one is a little more resigned to the outcome one way or the other, but the times that it has been a point of tension have been few.
And I will say that the way that we experience that is the sadness of the loser being at home by themselves while the other is partying it up at the victory celebration of their preferred candidate.
Well, so you guys obviously have identified for us what your shared interests are. You're both super curious. You both like politics, right? So even though you have different politics, you're both enthusiastic about politics. I'm curious if your enthusiasm for politics has waned at all over the years. As you said, David, like, sometimes you're like, we don't really like either of these candidates. And the fact that your political differences, have those been highlighted, or have those tensions grown at all over the years as just the candidates and the issues change?
My interest remains high, but my affiliation is I'm a Hubert Humphrey Democrat.
Yeah.
And so the only party I like less than the Democratic Party is the Republican Party.
Interesting. And it seems like you also like difference, that you are actually attracted to that difference in each other.
I think we're attracted to just having curiosity about other people and the way they view the world. And I think part of the sadness of the moment in time we have is that people are eliminating that from the equation when they're dating. The fact that people have decided that I'm just not going to date somebody who has a different politics than I do, and means you're cutting off a pretty large swath of potential candidates, is really sad. Because at the core, I think there are many Democrats. David just described himself. David, it's possible he might have found a Democrat with whom he would disagree more than a Republican.
In your conversations about your differences, whether they're about politics, religion, whatever, have you found yourself coming to greater understanding or even changing your views on certain issues just because of your conversations with each other? Or is it like we're still kind of rooted in where we were, we're just able to talk about it? I'm curious, I guess, how you've rubbed off on each other in terms of, it could be religion, it could be politics, can any of these things in which you guys had, differences? What are your thoughts, Farah?
I would say absolutely. None come to mind at the moment, but we've been together a long time, so I know we've have lots of places where we've had some mind melds around what we believe in. I do want to share one story because I think it's an interesting one. Not that long ago, David said to me, he reflected on the fact that we're of different religious orientations, and we both are observant. We both go to services.
And what are your
week.
religions, by the way?
I'm Christian.
And I'm Jewish.
Okay.
And we both observe every week. And what's interesting is he said at one point he realized that because I'm Christian, it actually made things easier. One is we don't have to negotiate holidays, but the other is that because I'm observant, it was actually easier to be in relationship with me than to be with a secular Jew.
Oh,
yeah,
because I could
understand that is a shared value.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, George, I want to bring you back into the conversation because you've heard their story. Can you talk about what they've been doing right to make the many differences that they have between them sort of not matter very much?
Yeah, I love this conversation. And one of the couple of things I've been thinking about. One, you both have said it multiple times already that you've been curious, right? And that I think that being curious and open to just someone else allows you to see their humanity, allows you to see what you like, it allows you to really connect with them. And it sounds like over and over and over again, you both have leaned into, I just want to know more. I want to learn more. Obviously, they're both highly educated, so I assume that they're learners, they're achievers in their life. I think the other thing that I hear is that for many of us, or even as part of this conversation, we've been saying how politics and differences are boundaries versus being open doors. And I think for the two of them, differences is more of like a way to kind of like lean in and walk through that door and get to know someone versus a boundary saying, no, I'm not going to go there. And I think that's the difference, which I've been able to hear. And I think it's just great that they just continue to learn from all the different differences to lean into ways that they can connect.
Yeah, and I wondered what you have in common, because I'm thinking that we may look at you and see differences, but I'll bet that you have a lot of things that you have in common. You're both lawyers, so just probably the list is just very long, I'm assuming, right?
But it's seldom the superficial that matters.
Yeah.
It's really just core principles. We believe in God. We believe religion is an important way to develop oneself, one's ability to navigate the world and to contribute to the world. We both are involved in public service. We both believe that politics is a potential vehicle for solving our societal problems. We just disagree on which tactics should be employed. We both are committed to family. I don't know what you would add, David.
I was going to say the negative in this context, which is I don't think politics is our primary identity, which I think can create problems in relationships. But if I were to list the various ways that I identify, Democrat wouldn't be in the top 5.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And obviously for other people, it's just, and I'm guessing for the folks that find it very difficult to have any type of relationship with someone across party lines, it's because that identity of Democrat or Republican or it might be progressive, conservative, however you define it, is very high on their personal list. And I'm curious if that's what you see when talking with clients, George, that it's sort of a matter of sort of the priority level of their political identity among all their other identities.
Yeah, I think the deeper kind of therapy part of this is that who am I being loyal to, right? So if I'm a Democrat or Republican, maybe someone else in my life is also a Democrat or Republican or some value there. And if I go against that, am I doing something wrong for myself and my family, right? And so, or if I've learned in my family to treasure differences or get to know people, then I can explore that more. So I think, yes, it could be higher on the priority list, but it's also about this challenge and struggle within myself of what will my identity be if I make this choice.
And I wonder, are you all unicorns among your friends as far as being, an interpolitical relationship? Do you see it happening more or less just in the folks around you in your circles?
So it's interesting. I was going to say yes, or unicorns, but maybe not so much, because we have a lot of friends. They carry the same political label. They don't share the same view of politics. And so that's where the danger is that people are using the label as if it answers all the questions, and it doesn't. Two Democrats can be wildly different in terms of what they believe, and it doesn't mean they're going to make a good match.
And two Republicans can be very different because there's a spectrum, right?
That's exactly right.
Very interesting.
I'm going to read in this comment from D. My husband and I split up after 41 years of marriage. The primary reason was political differences. The first Trump term, combined with the pandemic, made life extremely tense. Discussions escalated into a yelling match quickly. Having a partner you couldn't discuss anything remotely political with made for a very distant and lonely life. We took our anger toward both sitting presidents out on each other. I moved into my own home 4 days after Trump won his second term. My life is peaceful, and my mental health has greatly improved. Well, thank you for that comment, Dee, and for your vulnerability. I'm just curious, you might have the advice for someone like this difference is just not worth working through. You just see the world too differently, and I'm curious how you come at that as a therapist, George, of helping people figure out where is the point of no return. Politics maybe matters or our political views matter just too much to us, and ultimately it's just not going to be a great match. I just feel like that's got to be such a devastating thing to try to deal with.
I know.
Yeah, I think on one level that if we really strip down and get to the place of really getting to know the person, there are ways that we can connect and find value and find commonality. I think in that case with the person that you just shared, they probably also didn't learn how to argue with each other and deal with really difficult things. And then when it intensified, now it becomes really harsh and probably mean and hurtful. And then now, yes, I don't feel safe, and my safety is now away from you. And so sometimes, yes, the best decision might mean to move on. And that's hard and sad, but sometimes the reality of where people have to go. And they need help in doing that.
Is there some simple advice people can have to roll back that? Because, marriage is ending. That's the worst case scenario.
And that's tough. And for the caller or the person that you just mentioned, I would hope that, and I would say for other people, get support before it gets to the very extreme. Talk to someone, read the books, listen to the podcast, do all those things, and really talk to your partner and saying that this really is important to me. This could be a deal breaker. Can we figure it out? Because sometimes they don't know it's that big of a deal until it's too late.
Well, I want to thank our guests this hour for sharing so much. I mean, I feel like this, especially if Farah and David, just thank you for talking about this openly. And also, kids out there, go to the job fair. It's worth it.
You never know.
You never know. Don't just be on Indeed.
Wait, did you get the job?
I got the husband.
There
you go. Well, that was a win.
Farah Jimenez, David Hyman, thank you so much for your time today on Studio 2. And same to you, Dr. George James, therapist and author of I Give Myself Permission. Appreciate your time so much.
Thank you.
I got to read this comment in from Bernie.
Yes, please do.
As we close, I was in a 5-year relationship with someone who was almost diametrically opposed to my liberal progressive politics and activism. My earnest attempts to find common political ground were largely unsuccessful, but our sexual relationship was like dynamite.
Well, okay,
I've
Bernie.
long wondered if that political tension somehow supercharged our sexual relationship. We'll save the Freudian analysis for another day.
And we're not even going to ask y'all that question over there.
we're gonna.
But David was smiling.
George said, it's a possibility.
David was smiling. I'll just point that out. By the way, thank you so much to our producers, Debbie Builder and Andreas Copes. Mike Schiffler is our visual producer. Al Banks and Tina Calicay engineered today's show. Our executive producer is Kevin McCory from Studio 2 here at WHYY in Philadelphia. I'm Cherry Gregg.
I'm Avi Wolfman-Arent. We will talk to you tomorrow, Election Day.
Yes.
And tomorrow on Studio 2, voters will head to the polls. We'll check in on the big races in New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
And you can listen to Studio 2 live right here on 90.9 FM. It's streaming on YouTube and Facebook. And you can listen to Studio 2 wherever you get your podcast. By the way, we will be back tomorrow. Coming up next on WHYY, Here and Now.
Supporting